This is the CCW Digital Speaker Spotlight series. As always, I'm Brian Cantor, Principal Analyst for CCW Digital, and your host for today's discussion. Now let's talk about the idea of change. Particularly, let's focus on the fact that there are two facets to the idea. One concerns the world around us. We encounter change all the time. People change, worldviews change. And in our business, the customer contact space, demands and expectations change. That vision of the ultimate customer experience is always evolving. Now, the other element of change is what we do in response to what's going on outside of us. How do we adapt to evolutions in the market? How do we prepare ourselves to not only stay relevant, but stay one step ahead of that ever-moving target? For far too many organizations, the answer is unfortunately not well enough. Organizations resist change for a variety of reasons, and the end result, though, is always the same. They fall behind. Within the contact center space, they let their tools and systems age to such an extent that they begin to hurt their ability to empower agents and satisfy customers. Essentially, the tools and technology are doing the exact opposite of why they were bought in the first place, the exact opposite of what they should be doing in a great organization. And so it's time to, you guessed it, change that philosophy. It's time to embrace ways to stay agile, stay productive, and most importantly, stay customer and agent-centric. Jim Kowalczyk of Fresenius Medical Care will be discussing the change management journey at CCW Nashville this January. Ahead of the session, he's here to share some insights. Jim, how are you?
I'm doing great, Brian. How are you?
I'm doing great, and so really looking forward to this topic because at every conference, every webinar, every report, the goal is always to make recommendations about what needs to be done. But I think if we forget the foundation and the things that are creating these barriers to change within our organizations, it doesn't matter how many great ideas we have. It doesn't matter how many great recommendations we make. Organizations are not going to be able to take advantage of that, and we're going to fall behind. And so I'm really looking forward to seeing how you identified opportunities to make a change and what you did to really mobilize that action. I feel like I'm not the only one who's interested. I feel like that's going to be very resonant with the entire audience because everyone in customer contact goes through this kind of challenge.
No, absolutely. It's definitely a daily challenge for those of us in the customer contact space, and having folks that. We generally have a lot of folks in our centers that will go through a lot of heroics, and it gets to the point where they're so used to working with that antiquated technology that it becomes a non-issue to them. Sometimes you have to step back away from it to see what those challenges are. With me walking into Fresenius, it's a business that's still very much run via fax, phone calls, and emails, which are all fairly difficult to control and even harder to performance manage, just due to the lack of tracking and visibility to really what's going on. Again, sometimes you have to kind of remove yourself from the day-to-day action to really see what those issues are. And determine, which is your best path forward to solve those challenges.
And essentially right there, you really provide an agenda for today's discussion. I really want to walk through how you identified problems, what steps you took, and why that's something that's relevant and valuable for organizations who are out there perhaps wrestling with the same thing, maybe not today, but something that may come down for them in the horizon. And so I want to start basically just like, when you kind of enter this environment, you notice that there were some problems with technology, problems with the system. What stood out to you? What were some of the things that stood out as these things need to be fixed? We really need to take action.
Well, really the first thing that jumped out was how the systems were adapted. So in a lot of cases, they were attempting to use systems that were built for one purpose to do something completely different. The best example is the main platform that most of the business is being run on is really truly a billing platform. It's built for medical billing and insurance management, and what it had, I guess, attempted to be evolved into a CRM. The problem is it really wasn't very good at that. And because of those gaps in capabilities, all types of other processes grew around it, whether they be, cheat sheets and things hanging on agents' walls to, processes that folks put together on their own to Excel spreadsheets and different tools that were kind of homegrown to get the job done, right? So the intent was very good and very positive, but also very uncontrolled and inconsistent. So because of that, it's really tough to provide that great customer experience that everyone expects, the great employee experience, right? It makes their jobs really difficult that they're kind of working with these out-of-date tools and very, very manual, clunky processes. And it's also almost impossible to train, right? Because every single person kind of has their own way of doing things, and that consistency is just not there. It's even more of a challenge when you have a multi-site situation where sites are possibly supporting the same line of business, but again, if I call the office in Atlanta, I'll get one experience, but if I talk to the folks in Denver, it's a completely different experience. So those are some of the main things that really just were glaringly obvious that needed to be changed. And it really started from, you got to start from the ground up. So you look at what do you want it to be, right? And so get out of the how we always have done it and get folks to start to think on the how should it be and how could it be, and build that baseline. So that was kind of step one, is getting that baseline established. And then from there, starting to kind of build upon that. And I'm a big fan of trying to, build things in an environment. Sometimes it's through, HTML or simple tools that we can put together, kind of proof of concept to see if it actually works before we charge down the path and have IT start to build a large enterprise-wide solution. But really kind of, again, getting that baseline established. What are we trying to achieve? What are our goals from a patient relationship perspective, a customer relationship perspective, an employee relationship perspective? What are all the goals for these different things? And then determine, what is the best solution to put in place. And again, it's in an effort to avoid kind of those false starts and being in the same situation where we're taking, a system that might exist or may have been around for a long time and trying to make it into something it's not. Determine what it is that we really want, and then buy the right solution to meet that goal.
And what I like about what you brought up there is you were really very clearly talking about the ramifications on the customer, on the agent, on the supervisor, not just looking at it purely in terms of productivity or efficiency sense. And I think that's important because if you think about it purely in terms of efficiency, if you think about, here's how broken systems or dated systems are not allowing us to be productive, you're creating a cost argument, right? And therefore it becomes easy for someone to reject your proposal, reject your change, because they're okay enduring a little bit more inefficiency, a little bit worse productivity in order to avoid the cost of upgrading technology. But instead, when you dial it right into how is this affecting the agent? How is it affecting the customer? You create these far deeper reaching problems, this better analysis to really determine what is the value of change, what is the cost of kind of staying the way we are, and I'd imagine that makes it a lot easier to move forward with your transformation. So I'm wondering, when you talked about the impact on customers, the impact on the agent, what were some of the ways that you really sort of quantified that or analyzed that to say, hey, based on the current systems that we have going, it's a real problem for these very important stakeholders?
Right. Well, one of the most effective tools that I found was to have some of our key senior executives do a tour of our facility, right, and really have them watch some of the processes actually being executed by the agents. So, just seeing that visually, what folks had to go through on a daily basis to do the most basic tasks really made a big impact. Because it's one thing to sit in a conference room and talk about, well, this takes 3 minutes and doing this task takes 5 minutes, and then, they have to do an email. But when they watch it happen and then realize that, end to end, that process, which ultimate result is, a communication out to one of our clinic locations or out to one of our customers, our customer hospitals, that end-to-end process can take up to 13 minutes to execute. That makes a giant impact, right? The other piece is really just having feedback sessions, right? And so we did a lot of feedback sessions with the end users and kind of took that blue sky approach. Of course, not promising that we'll fix every problem they come up with, but at least giving them the opportunity to have a voice and to express what they think would make their jobs easier and make them more effective, and really put them in a position where they feel good at the end of the day that they really got something accomplished and they're not just worn out because it's such a such a manual process that they have to remember all these steps and going to multiple systems and who's supposed to get what when and all those different types of things. So, starting with that end user feedback, showing some real world examples of, what would seem to be a very simple, easy task, how difficult and complex it really is just because of the infrastructure that's lacking, right? And so that was really the way we approached it from a baseline. On the flip side, you look at things like, employee satisfaction. It's a big driver for many companies. They want to be, employer of choice. How much the tools that we provide the employees and the feedback that we're able to provide and performance data when we have good systems in place that we can truly show that productivity and what they're getting done and show the successes easily. It really makes a big difference to employees. They want to know they're doing a great job, and they want to kind of not have to worry so much about process and get more focused on actually delivering that great service that we want to deliver. So that was really our approach in getting kind of the support for these changes.
Yeah, and so I think getting people to understand what needs to happen, starting to build that baseline, and then look to that vision of what does success look like, where are you ultimately trying to go, understanding that destination, that's pivotally important. It sounds like that's your recommendation for kind of from an objective, from a theoretical standpoint, how to get going. But I want to dive into the action as well because, granted, it's rare that you're going to be fixing one problem or dealing with one slow system. A lot of times these situations are organization-wide. There's a lot of gap areas, a lot of things standing in the way of you achieving your ultimate objective, kind of realizing that vision that you set for yourself. So I'm wondering kind of how you get started. How do you decide what to prioritize? And how do you make sure that you're still delivering a great customer experience even while you're making this transformation on the back end?
Absolutely. Well, most companies, Fresenius included, is one that there is generally going to be some legacy system that's very deeply ingrained in the organization. So, from that perspective, we're being realistic about that. That system's going to be there. We're not necessarily going to eliminate that system or make it go away. So what we looked at is starting to look to view how we can layer on the other systems that can provide the tools needed to, achieve that vision for what we want to do with for our customers and for our employees. So the plan of attack was determine, what needs to be there in that legacy system, right? So what's there, what has to be there for billing purposes, for compliance purposes, those types of things, and then define our requirements over and above what that system's capabilities are. So, we have a lot of medical records and documentation that we have to manage. So, we need that documentation management aspect of it. And really the main piece that's missing from our puzzle was that telephony integration, so CTI functionality, so we have better intelligence of what's coming into us, our hospital relationship information, so knowing kind of who our external customers are, as well as having that information about our internal customers as well. We have a network of over 2,500 clinics, and so knowing all the details about each clinic and what their capabilities are and different things like that, all the contact information. And then we have our patients, right? So we have to have all of our patient information. So how do we pull all that together into a good, usable format for our agents? Eliminate the whole piece of having to jump from system to system to system to do multiple data entry spots, right? Every time you have to move to one system to another, or there's disconnects in your data flow, there's opportunities for error and incorrect information flowing across. So it's that approach of this is what we need over and above what our legacy system capabilities are. And really what we settled on is going to a CRM platform that's really going to provide us, that tool to kind of tie all the pieces together, have a good visibility into that customer to patient to clinic experience, so we can see end to end how that process flows, and then even it'll give us the capability to expand beyond just our group here for any other group that also has to have an interaction with that patient on an ongoing basis. They'll also be able to see kind of that history from the moment they became our patient to what's going on with them in an ongoing relationship basis. So those are kind of the, hopefully I answered your question, but it's really getting into the actions that took place. It was just determining what really was needed and then finding that right solution. So rather than trying to, make something from nothing, which is what was done in the past, we went out and found a solution that can really satisfy those needs, and we're in the process of putting that in place now and tying all those pieces together.
Yeah, so in a sense, it's almost not thinking about what needs to be fixed. It's about thinking about what can be better or what can be more aligned with your vision, and then starting with that perspective and then finding the solutions, the systems, the processes that fit into that overall vision.
Absolutely, absolutely. And a lot of times, as I said, there's going to be things that just are not going to change, right? And you just have to work with that or work kind of around that. But it is really key to having that clear vision. What is it that you're trying to achieve, and then getting the right solution.
Now, a lot of what you talked about really does improve the agent experience. You referenced how by having a unified CRM, they're going to have access to patient records. They're not going to have to jump from system to system to be able to provide support or do their job. Everything is going to be a lot easier for them. And so on the surface, it seems like that's a very easy way to communicate the value of the change to your actual end users, to your agents, because it's going to make their lives easier. It's going to make them more productive. But there is one caveat here. There's one complication, and that's the idea of they are going to have to learn a new system. They are going to have to deal with some change and some fluctuation in their day-to-day. And some people are naturally resistant to that. That may feel uncomfortable. That may not be something they really want to do. So how did you sort of secure, or do you recommend securing buy-in from these individual agents who are going to be the ones actually using your system to make sure that they're okay with the fact that, yes, it's not going to be exactly the same. You may have to learn some new tools, but at the end of the day, the value is going to be there for you.
Yeah, absolutely. So what we really do, the best thing I can recommend is always bring them in early. So as soon as you have something to show them, right, and something that they can kind of get their hands on, bring folks in. So we've been doing a lot of rounds of kind of feedback sessions. We have a training environment that they can actually get in that has patient data, so they can get an idea for the look and feel. And we're really emphasizing the fact that we want their feedback. We want to know everything, every recommendation, every idea they have, even if it's as simple as something about the screen color or something, the placement of something on the screen or a piece of information that they'd like to see, and all those little details. And it's really helped to build interest and really getting folks engaged with, wow, this really can be easier. It's almost a case of trying to build evangelists out there in our agent population to say, this thing is great. You can't imagine what it's going to be able to do. And I found out it does. I can set follow-ups for myself, and I can do this, and I can do that. And so we're kind of creating a buzz on the floor. And it's not a force. It's not a, hey, we made this new system, here you go. It's, you guys are actively involved in helping us build this. You guys are this is built for you, and giving them some level of ownership. And that's really been exciting to see the energy build up around it. And sometimes the ones, you get it out there to your biggest naysayers first, right? So, and in a lot of cases, those folks will give you very valuable feedback once they kind of get in there and they start playing around a little bit and really, start to see that this might be, yes, it is a change and it is different, but it might be good. So, getting that buy-in, and involving them early on where they don't feel that this is something that the executives just decided on and, it's the next new system that we're going to have to work in. Making them feel a part of it, making them feel engaged and that they have a voice in how we're going to do business going forward has really been amazing. Even looking further out, we're looking even at, gamification where, the provider that we're looking at does a lot around end user education that's just out there available. And so, having somewhat of a gamification aspect where we're encouraging our folks to learn more about what the tool can do and what its capabilities are and how we can better utilize it to provide those great customer experiences and all those types of things. And so, using that as a secondary piece to again build those kind of evangelists of the system and get them just get them fully engaged in the effort and really feel like they're in partnership with the leadership team and not just a recipient of this tool.
Now, you talked about really tying your change, tying your new investments, tying your upgrades, your new processes, whatever it may be, to important high-level objectives, your vision for a great customer experience, your vision for a great business. And so I'd imagine you have to also make sure that your change is being productive, that you truly are getting closer to those objectives. And so what are some recommendations you have for actually measuring the impact of your change, the impact of your new investments?
Well, I think the main thing with that is focusing in on a vital few. So much of the time, everyone, there's a tendency to want to measure, a huge number of metrics across the board. But there's only a few that are really going to drive the business forward, whether it's from a growth perspective, whether it's from an employee engagement or a customer satisfaction perspective. So it's really zeroing in on those vital few KPIs that we should measure that are going to really move things forward. For us, it's a lot of, we're in the healthcare industry, so we have to be very accurate, right? We really can't have any mistakes. So for us, it's about being very accurate. That's our quality measure, and speed. Speed is also a factor. So getting things moved quickly and getting our patients placed quickly and efficiently. So those are two of the key things that we look at. And so everything centers around, cycle times and processing times and things like that. So with our implementation, that is what we're looking at. And with the thought of, as it gets more efficient, our processing times, our speed should go up, our quality should go up, and that, again, will drive our agents will be happier, and they'll actually have the time to provide a little bit higher level of service and make a couple extra calls out to our hospital partners and work more on the relationship aspect and less on processing. When you have a lot of manual processes in place and you're reliant on sending emails and things, you really don't have any visibility of it into it other than spending all day watching a mailbox. So not a very good use of time. And even from a supervisor perspective, we want them to have visibility to their team and making sure that things are moving along at the right pace, and anything that may be stuck or there's an exception, that they can quickly identify that and jump in and provide the assistance needed to continue moving that down the path. So the best advice is don't try to measure everything. Take the time, really determine what those key KPIs are that drive your business. Focus on those. They may encompass other things underneath, but end of the day, those are the things that are going to tell you if you're successful or not.
Now, I want to change the subject a little bit, and yeah, I went there, and get to know you a little bit more, because part of CCW is really not just the learning and the speaking and the opportunities to get great content, but also to network with peers and get to know some of the accomplished and ambitious people within the space, and you're definitely one of those. And so, first off, I want to ask you, have you ever been to Nashville before?
Absolutely. Been to Nashville several times. Huge fan of live music, and Nashville is just loaded with that. Also have a couple really great breweries, so so love the craft beer. So it's always fun to try out what's out there locally.
Definitely. I think it's certainly going to be a lot of fun. Can't wait to get down there. So, sounds like you love Nashville, but you probably have been to other cities, I would imagine, on vacation. And so what is your favorite place to go overall? Had to pick one place to vacation for the rest of your life, what's it going to be?
I love the Gulf Coast of Florida, and there's a little town called Mexico Beach down there that's still very small and not very touristy, and it's just an awesome place to go. But maybe I should give a different location so it can kind of stay that way.
Definitely, yeah. Well, speaking of things that you may not want to disclose to the world, I'm curious, what's your biggest guilty pleasure?
Oh my goodness, chocolate chip cookies. I cannot say no to a good chocolate chip cookie.
So it sounds like we're kind of building exactly what we need to do to make CCW satisfying for you. We got to have a live music outing. We got to make sure we have good beer, and we got to make sure the cookies are stocked on the exhibit hall floor. It should be a great time. Now, kind of a little bit serious, maybe not as serious as some of the actual topic stuff, but certainly. Do you have a particular business role model, a company or a person that you look up to from a corporate or career standpoint?
Yeah, I would have to say, so for one of my prior employers, the CEO, Michael Casey of Carter's, was just someone to really look up to. His approach, very, very measured, very thought out. I was always impressed by the way he handled the quarterly business review calls, and just always had that consistent vision, regardless of what was going on. Steady hand, always stayed consistent, and really, when you look at the results of that company, it shows. And it really, he created a great place to work, and so want to take that forward everywhere I go and take that same approach.
So speaking of passing it forward, obviously he had a good impact on your career, how you view the business world, what you want to achieve. What are some advice that you have for those listening who are trying to move forward in their own careers and accomplish their own objectives?
one of the things that I almost have a hobby of taking kind of those personality profiles. So whether it's Myers-Briggs, whatever, there's a million of them out there that you can take. But every opportunity I have to take those, I do. And just to know yourself and know what your strengths are, and that helps you surround yourself with the right type of people, right? Because everyone has their strengths and weaknesses, and so it's always good to balance out. Surround yourself with people that are their strengths or your weakness, and vice versa. Hopefully, it works out, and that's where you build just amazing teams that can get a lot of things accomplished.
Definitely. Well, Jim, I want to thank you so much for sharing so many great insights, so many great action points today. And what's crazy about all that is that you have a lot more to share, a lot more wisdom to impart, and that's all going to happen in Nashville this January. So very much looking forward to your involvement in our program.
Well, I appreciate it, Brian. Thank you for your time today.
And for CCW Digital, this has been Brian Cantor.